Going to be doing a little work on a 99 Dodge Ram pickup truck today. It's got a rear main seal that's leaking. So we'll go through that, figure it all out. Okay, I figure everybody needs a vehicle and needs to fix their vehicle, so maybe rear main seal can help somebody. And here's how we do it. So here's the Ram that we have in the shop to do a oil rear main seal. This is a Dodge 1500 extended cab, two-wheel drive, but it does have the 360 engine in it. So we're going to take it apart, lift it up on the hoist, and see what we can do. So here's the engine that we were going to change the rear main seal and oil pan gasket while we're at it. One thing that you want to make sure that you do is you want to unhook the battery. Now, when you unhook the battery, unhook the negative. That way, if you use a wrench, and if you hit any metal things, no sparks. Disconnect the negative. More than likely, you'll have to take the starter off. We'll find out when we're down underneath there. Okay, so here's under the truck. As we kind of pan through here, you can see the beginning of the pan here is pretty dry. No problems there. Remember, this is a 1999, so it's got a few miles on it. We come back over here, and I'll try to get this to come up here. And if you can see, it's not real bad here. You can see it's really bad back up in there, and you can see that there's some oil coming up in through here. So the whole point here is I'm going to change the rear main seal and obviously the oil pan gasket also. Now this has been leaking for a long time. I've had the truck for quite a few years, but I don't drive it much. I think I've only put a few thousand miles on it in the last 4 or 5 years. So as you can see though, it's really leaking here. It could be something as simple as the oil pan gasket, but I kind of doubt it. I think it's the rear main, but I've got both gaskets. I'm changing them both no matter what, and we'll go from there. Of course, first things first, we'll have to drain the oil. This is a 5/8. Of course, I already loosened it. And we'll just dump the oil out of this because obviously we don't want to have any more of a mess than what is going to happen. So here we go. Just like that. Now I know some people aren't going to have a hoist to work with, and this can be done without a hoist. However, I needed a hoist. I can't have a harder time crawling under cars anymore. So here we go, draining the oil. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is there's these brackets, or at least this one bracket over here on the side that we'll want to remove so we can get to the oil pan gaskets over here. The other thing will be we may need to take this shield off. I'm not exactly sure. And we may need to take this bracket off also on the other side, just for extra clearance and wiggling room. But we'll figure that out as we go. Okay, so now that I got the pan loosened down, it's hitting the cross member, which I expected. So now I have to go up and see where the socket is sitting right there. 21 millimeter. And then on this side is an 18 millimeter, so it's 21 millimeter on the other. The nut is 21 millimeter. The bolt is 18. So I'm gonna take these mounts loose. You don't have to take them out, just got to take those bolts loose. And I'm going to jack the motor up and get enough clearance to get this pan out completely is my plan. I have enough room around the transmission and everything, so this should be just kind of a just kind of loosen it up, slide it up, and get that pan out, and we'll see how this really goes. Okay, as you can see, I got the motor mount bolt loose, and then I tapped it with a hammer just slightly, and it moves right through, so we have a gap on the other side like that to lift the motor up just enough to get past that gap or that flange if we need to. Same with this side. I did it on the other side. I tapped on it, and this is what the other side would look like. Just loose. It's not hard. I did use a 1/2-inch breaker bar and ratchet to kind of get it started. Then I used my impact to take it out the rest of the way. Did take a swivel and stuff, but you can be creative on however you need to do that. You get long extensions and go straight through and everything, but I use a 1/2-inch drive stuff on that. One other thing you have to do is remove the starter. In order to remove this plate, it's on the back side there. This plate right there. It's just a shield between the converter, torque converter. Keeps garbage out of that and stuff. So anyway, you got to remove that plate. That gives you just a little extra room to pull down this oil pan. Only a couple bolts hold that starter on right up there. And that's where the starter goes, right there. Bolt on top, bolt on bottom. Both same size. They happen to be a 5/8. So just a couple bolts, pull it down. You can unhook the starter here if you'd like and move it completely out of your way. I don't know that I'm going to do that, but we'll see. So here I did this. Took that plate off. There's 3 little screws that go around, and then the starter. There's a stud here on the starter. So that I had to kind of pry that off a little bit, but then all 3 of those screws in it just came right down. And I have this engine jacked up now, as you can see, just outside the motor mounts, like that. See? So that way, that's all you need. And that pan just about fell out after I took that plate off. The problem is that this inspection shield or dust shield that for the converter here, the problem was it's got all kinds of little bends and ripples in it and stuff, and the pan just didn't want to quite go by all the way. So by taking that off, it let the pan go forward or backward just a little bit towards the transmission and drop down. And then it just kind of slid right past that transmission, just like I said, just about fell out. So here's the oil pan here. And I'll do a little cleanup on that, of course, before I put it all back in. But that's the oil pan. You can see there's a slot. You can see that, but I don't want to get too close because things are kind of dripping. But there's a slot that pickup goes into. See, so you kind of got to work around that, but it goes right in and right out, no problem. Next thing, we'll be looking at the oil pan or the oil pickup, and we'll be taking this stuff apart right here, so I can get to that rear main seal. and I will knock that out, and then we will go from there. So here's the oil pump. So I suppose if you wanted to change oil pump, now's the time to do it. These are 9/16 bolts. There's two of them, one here and one there. They bolt to the back of the rear main. And I will be cleaning all this up. Now this engine has almost 180,000 miles on it, so I may just take this apart and inspect it, I'm not sure, or maybe replace it. But regardless, I had to take this off, obviously, to get that rear main cap off. I'll show you what that is like. It is messy. I made a mess. But that's part of an oil. Kind of see up there a little bit. Let me grab a light so bolts on right there. That's where the drive comes through and drives it from your distributor. Actually, there's an intermediate drive that drives both the distributor and the oil pump. So that's the main cap I got to take off. Remember, that thing's got to get torqued back on. And I'll take that off and knock out that rear main seal. Okay, I'm going to try to show you this. Get this rear main out. In order to do that, it's right here. It's right here. So in order to do that, you just kind of lightly tap, and it starts to drop. You see that? Now I'm going to need two hands to do this. But the point is, just take a hammer, small hammer, like this, ball peen, and just kind of wrap on it a little bit on the side, and that thing will start to drop, and then you'll see that it'll come right out. Don't need a whale on, nothing like that, just enough to just tap it to get it going. That's all you need. So don't need to get any more. And as you can see, this is extremely drippy and oily under here, so I'm like wearing all kinds of oil. But that's the kind of job this is, you know. If take it to a shop, I can only imagine how much this would actually cost. So anyway, this is what you got to do if you want to get a rear main leak taken care of on this, as you can see. So I got the rear main cap out. That's what this was. Like I said, a slight tap and that thing will start to drop. So you got to use two hands. You want to make sure you catch that. You don't want that thing to fall. And you can see the bearing on there right there. See? Now this engine has, like I said, about 180,000 miles on it. And these bearings, this bearing anyway, looks really nice. There isn't really any scratching in that. And so I like that. Now if these were all scratched and gouged up, that's gonna tell you that there's more damage than you want, that's for sure. But they would have to all be replaced, but you'd have to figure out why it's happening. But on the same token, then here's the seal. This is what we're going to be replacing right here. And as you can see on this one, the seal is pushed down, and it's really hard, you know, and that's from time. It's almost brittle. You can see the dirt and grime that's been building up on the outside of the seal. Eventually, you know, these things, they get a little hard, they get a little crusty, and then all of a sudden, you know, they stop sealing. And this vehicle had an oil leak that was bad enough that you didn't want it sitting in your driveway. So the idea is now that we got to pull this out, put the seal in the correct way, which this is correct, and tap the other one out of the block and put it in, and we will get this thing buttoned up and starting back together again. Now I've only been at this for just over an hour so far to get this far. Granted, if I had this thing on jack stands and it was a little bit more, you know, laying on your back and stuff, sure, it'd probably take a little bit longer. Some people are real good at it that way too. So one thing I want to show, getting this out. Getting this out of here. So I have like a pick. You could probably use a small screwdriver, you know, kind of like this guy, to get in there. But what you want to do is you kind of want to get alongside here, and then you kind of want to pry this up like that. Because what will happen is these are kind of stuck in there a little bit, and they're firm to begin with. So then you can see it just comes right out. Okay. Now remember, the way you're going to put this back in, and I'll show you how to exactly put it in, but you're going to put it in the other one the same way. And that's important because the seal almost seems like it's backwards, but if you think about it, it's not. You see this edge right here? It's a sharper edge, and that's not allowing the oil to come out this way. If you flipped it, oil would come this way and go right past there. There would be no good sealing edge. The hard edge is on this side as far as sealing. And you can kind of see that when I hold it like this. Okay? This edge over here is the edge that actually has to go in. And that's the sealing edge. This edge here that you see here, that's just a dust edge, but you can see the taper here. See, that taper's got to go out. It gets smaller to the inside where the actual oil seal is, and that is very important. So here is the main cap. I just kind of sprayed it down with some, you know, like brake parts cleaner or something like that. So what we want to do is we want to put the seal in. Now the seal, you really need to oil the seal. So I'm going to just want to make sure this actually helps it seal. So we're going to shove this in here like this, and you can see how I'm just kind of grabbing both sides. I'm just going to kind of shove it in there. So I obviously can't do this one-handed, so I'll get it in there, and you see the way I have this in there is that same taper, just like I took it out, is to that inside there. See? The rear main seal is right there. So it's right in there. So you see it's barely there, but on this side you can kind of see it sticking out a little bit. I don't get the camera underneath there too much. But so you know, here's what I did. I took a punch like this, and I stuck it up in there, and I tapped it. And you tap it with a small hammer, nothing big, and you just don't want it. You don't want to damage that crankshaft at all, where that seal is there. See? So I just tapped it around just so I got it to start coming out. I can come around here, and you can see it coming out right there. So that's what you want it to do. Is going to just kind of roll around the crankshaft seal area there, and then I will pull that all the way out. I will do the opposite to the new one coming in. Again, I'll lube it up nice, so it should slide in relatively easy. This one was kind of stuck, which I expect, simply because it's been in there for so long, and it just kind of gets stuck from the heat and everything else. So the new one should go in a lot nicer when I get there. Okay. Again, don't force that. It's just something that is, you just got to tap it. It's a little firm at first, and then it just kind of breaks loose. But you don't want to hit anything hard on that seal edge, because then you'll put a lip in there, or a groove or a gouge, and then you're going to wreck your seal. So there's the new seal going in, as you can see. Now, I just push that in by hand all the way around. Now, it's got a little snug right there, so I'm just going to lightly tap that all the way around. And then I will clean up all this around here and the gasket area, and then we'll seat the main cap back on. So here's the main cap. I'm getting ready to put that on. And as you can see, these notches here, that's where I'm going to squirt a little silicone in when I go to put the oil pan gasket on here. Just a little bit, just to kind of seal this corner up here. But anyway, I have the other seal in also. Again, the same way with the taper. I can't say that enough. This has got to be clean. You don't want any crud on there. You want to make sure that it's all clean. You don't want any crud on the bearings, anything like that. No crud on the seal either. This will go in. I'll put the main cap bolt on, and I will torque them. Okay, I torqued the bolts right here. There's two of them. They get torqued at 85 foot-pounds. And what I did was you snug them, and then I just go like an eighth of a turn, quarter of a turn, something like that, just so they pull down evenly. And then you'll feel it get tight, and then you can go 85 pounds of foot-pounds of torque on that. Now I'll put the oil pump on. Okay, here's the oil pan installed, the main cap installed. Now, one thing I do want to remind you is there is a drive shaft coming from the cam that's driving this oil pump. Now, it's a hex, like an Allen type hex. So you want to make sure that you feed that in correctly and push the oil pump all the way up before you start snugging these bolts. Since the bolts are off to the side like this, and the oil pump is like in the middle, the oil pump drive is like in the middle of that pump, you want to make sure that this thing seats properly. If you just start snugging it down, this could go crooked and never tighten right, and you'll end up breaking something. So it's good practice just to make sure the hex lines up in the drive shaft there, and slips all the way up to it's snug like that, and then hand screw one of the screws all the way up, and that'll hold it. Then you can start going. And now this gets torqued down to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, now that these are all ready, I just put a little dab of silicone, like right in these corners, all four corners there. So just a little bit. Everything else is scraped and dry. So now I'm going to jack the engine back up, because I had let it set down while I'm doing everything else. And then I will start to slide that oil pan back in. Now, as you can see, I got the pan up there and it's not bolted in yet, but I had lifted the engine up, put the pan gasket on the pan, fed the pan into the on top of the cross member here under the engine, and I have got this far. Now, I will tell you that keeping that pan gasket exactly on there wasn't very easy, and it kind of fell off here and there. But after I got the pan up there, I realigned it to get it all up in there, and it's not that bad to do. As you can see, there's the gasket right there. You can just barely see that through the hole. But I'm going to start a few bolts, and then we'll get her torqued down. All right, an update. We got that plate in. It's just hand tight right now. I'm going to put the starter in so that lines up good. And then I will worry about tightening up the little bolts, and then I'll put the side brackets on. One thing I think I'll do before I get the side bracket on is change the oil. I did tighten the oil pan plug. Don't forget to do that. And then I'll change the filter. I'll put those brackets on after the starter and snug down the little bolts. And then don't forget to do the motor mounts. Tighten those babies up. And then I got to put these lines right here back in the bracket, because I had taken those off so I could get them to move a lot better. And then I think we're going to get wrapped up here after filling up the oil. I'm going to probably spray down a little bit of this oil smuck underneath here with some brake clean, and then we'll go take her for a test drive and take a look to see how she is as far as the oil goes. So this is the job done. It's got the oil pan all back in. Got the motor mounts tight. Motor mounts are tight. The lines are back in the clip, the bracket there. The bracket didn't really have to come off, but I popped the lines out of the bracket so I could move the lines a little bit better. I just sprayed this all down, so there's still a little wet. I used a brake parts cleaner. And as you can see, the oil filter's changed, these brackets are on, the plate is back on, the starter is back on, all the bolts are back in, tightened again to 15 pound-feet of torque. Everything is tight. So the next thing is putting oil in it. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put the oil in. I'm going to start it up, let it run. I'm going to take it around the block. I'm going to kind of take another quick peek at it just to see how this worked. Okay, now I got it running. Check here. This all looks pretty good. Pretty dry yet. Obviously there might be some residuals from the oil. If we come back down here, this is where it always leaked really bad. Looking pretty good right now. Of course, I will take this for a drive, just kind of take a quick peek underneath it again. There might be some residual oil inside the bell housing here. I did not wipe that out, which wouldn't be a bad idea to do. To me, everything is looking pretty good. I've had the truck running for about 5 minutes sitting here. I had it up on the hoist. I double checked it again. I see no oil leaks at all. So I'm just going to take it around the block. Then I'm going to park it, and I'm going to let it set and see if there's anything that drips out. So after taking for a little ride in the truck, it looks like everything seems to be fixed. There's a little residual oil drip, which I expected out of that bell housing, but it's not leaking like it was, and I'm happy with it. So here it is.